And for more on this, we have in our Beijing studio, Cui Hongjian, Director of the Department for European Studies at the China Institute of International Studies, and Nicholas Rosellini, who is the Resident Coordinator of the United Nations in China, who's also a resident representative of UNDP, United Nations Development Program here in this country. Welcome, gentlemen, to both of you. I want to start with you, Mr. Rosellini, about the United Nations role and China's initiative on the Belt and Road. How does that work together?
Well, I see them as two very important global initiatives that are really coming together at the moment. The SDGs.
Sustainable Development Goals, 17 yes. of them.
Yeah, I mustn't use jargon. Sustainable Development Goals. Those were agreed by all the member states of the United Nations back in 2015, and 2016 was the first year of implementation. It gives a universal framework to make the lives of everyone around the world better, regardless of people living in a rich or a poor country, a developed country or a developing country.
SDG was also the ones being passed by the UN when the Chinese President Xi Jinping was there to attend the assembly meeting.
And China's really become now, since then, a champion of the SDGs, both domestically in terms of incorporating it into China's own development planning, as well as internationally in terms of supporting it in international fora and creating trust funds and investment for the Sustainable Development Goals.
But what about BRI? I mean, Belt and Road Initiative, how does that work together?
Well, the Belt and Road Initiative is coming from a slightly different direction. It's coming from the idea of connectivity, infrastructure. But if you look at the SDGs, that is also looking for improving infrastructure, for creating jobs, as well as continuing to improve services such as health and education. So the Belt and Road Initiative is actually very much a platform that can help accelerate the delivery of the SDGs.
Are we going to see redundance of the projects, or actually projects going to complement one another, and the roles of the United Nations or the roles of the countries involved on the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, going to complement one another?
We are trying to find out some connectivity or some integration between the SDG and the BRI. Yes, once we have some more projects on the BRI and in some especially countries alongside the road and the belt, certainly we can find out the embody of this SDG. Otherwise, we just have something on table. We could not have something, to show how is efficiency and how is this implementation of SDG.
That's right. It seems that China is eager, together with many partners along the Belt and Road Initiative, try to have some lower hanging fruits, to have some early harvest, as an example, so that the others also want to follow suit and also be more inspirational. So, Mr. Rosellini, I guess this has a lot to do with how SDG has been doing and working here in China. You and your colleagues working a lot on the public-private partnerships. Will there be experiences, lessons learned in those practices that could help with the BRI initiative?
I think they can certainly support each other. What the SDGs say is that it's not just about what your goals are in terms of improving people's lives and their well-being. It's also about what kind of partnerships you need to achieve those goals and where the resources are coming from, what kind of financing is available. And I think for the first time in terms of the international development community, we're trying to work very closely together with all parts of society, not just with governments and member states, but also with the private sector and with civil society. And we're looking at a bill for the SDGs which could approach for developing countries, $2 to $3 trillion a year.
All right.
The envelope for the whole world, developed and developing, is $5 to $7 trillion a year. And no one can do this by themselves. It needs the support of the international community through traditional development cooperation assistance. It needs countries like China with the South-South cooperation. But as you're referring to now, it needs the private sector. The private sector has to see itself as a stakeholder and a player in these achievements. And again, I think the Belt and Road Initiative, which has a focus on the private sector, is a very good delivery mechanism.
Is it misconception or not that many around the world believe the Belt and Road Initiative mainly is one coming from the Chinese government, and it's mainly state-owned enterprises and companies that are involved in it. But listening to what Mr. Rosellini had to say, it seems that it is much more than that.
Yes, of course. As we know that this initiative was proposed by Chinese government, but we can find also the principle from this initiative. According to even some official document from China, say that it will be open, it will be inclusive. And also I have a very deep impression about the PPP model, just like
Public-private partnership
yes.
once again.
According to the principle of Belt and Road Initiative, which means that we could reach a win-win cooperation. So we have to ask a question, who will be the winner?
Right.
Not only on the governmental or state-to-state level, not only in China and some other country, our government will be the winner. Especially in the background of some deglobalization, we need to take care more about how about these the different stakeholders and also these beneficiaries, not only government, not only country, and also average people, and also business, and also especially the public service.
Both of you have been working in very different countries, emerging and developing countries. You worked in Vietnam, in Pakistan, Bhutan, Ethiopia. You also work in the Caribbean countries, South Asian countries. You know, sometimes it's very hard to bring people on a level playing field when it comes to mentality. So how to convince people to be on the same platform with you?
What we can do in the UN, we have a large presence in most of the Belt and Road countries. We have our country offices there.
And for decades.
And for decades. They know the local environment, the local situation. They have good relations with the local government.
Right.
And they can help to position these kind of investments under the BRI into the local framework so that the local needs and priorities, the local policy, regulatory frameworks can be utilized or improved if needed through capacity building so that the investments coming from China can have the maximum impact.
Mr. Rosellini, you've been working on a daily basis with your colleagues around the Asia-Pacific region.
Yeah.
You know, what exactly are the most urgent needs from them?
You mentioned already I was working in Pakistan in the past, and I've just come back from a visit to some countries in Africa. And I mean, just from those impressions from those kind of countries, what is really important is energy. That many of these countries are energy deficient. This is delaying or slowing down their industrialization.
That's right.
And the multiplier effects of energy, access to energy, is very big. I mean, it can make a big boost on production, whether you're talking about large-scale manufacturing, whether you're talking about small-scale enterprises. Everyone needs energy. And certainly, there's a big role, I think, for China in supporting the development of energy, hopefully renewable energy, green energy, but the development of energy in these countries.
To bring in the sustainable component of it, to bring in the environmentally friendly component of it. China is still in a learning process of that. So it has to involve other partners, it seems, in order to achieve it. Mr. Rosellini, your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, China's made enormous leaps and bounds in terms of green technology. I mean, it's now the largest market for electric vehicles. It's the largest producer, and I think also installed capacity of photovoltaic.
But it's not just the green technology. It has to be all throughout the process when it comes to green.
Yeah. Well, we are at the Belt and Road Forum. We'll be launching a report on called the Global Governance Report, and that will make some policy recommendations on how to really focus on making the Belt and Road Initiative fully aligned with the attainment of the SDGs, particularly in terms of sustainability, social sustainability,
Give us some
environmental
preview. How?
Well, I think we have to break it down into on the China side with the private sector. How do we sensitize private companies in China to the need to go green?
Yes.
And that includes some ideas on setting up sustainable investment centers to raise awareness about some of the issues involved. And then on the partner countries side, it means looking at their own framework, their own capacities, their own institutions, their own policy frameworks, their own regulation, and also in the enforcement. I mean, it's often you need a strong partner on both sides to make things work well. And I think if we have that and a common understanding that sustainable investment is what we're looking for,
right.
Then we can move ahead.
You know, that reminds me of a very important point, Mr. Cui, that is, some people believe the BRI is just about China. It's about China providing the money, providing the technology, providing the labor force, or providing this and that. But actually, it is a vision under which China can work with all the other countries along the BRI together. And according to what Mr. Rosellini just said, it's impossible for China to go into those countries and operate and fulfill all of these requirements, as you just mentioned. So the local partners becoming extremely important.
Nice.
And meanwhile, the understanding that this is not about China, this is about we together, is extremely important, Mr. Cui.
Yeah, it's right. I think that firstly, we need to make clear that yes, this initiative was proposed by China, but it not belongs to China. So I think it's a very clear attitude from Chinese government. So that's the reason why at this moment China try to have this high-level forum. I think one of the very important goal for this forum is to get some more consensus on how could we do something together. China and some countries or some partners, we need to do something to have some concrete project. If so, we can have some more convincing, proofs to persuade more and more stakeholders, more and more.
Both of you talk about concrete projects. Let's have that lower hanging fruits. But infrastructure projects, it takes years to build, first of all, and secondly, to see the benefits of it.
Right.
It's a gradual process. So what kind of lower hanging fruit that we can really talk about, that we can throw to those leaders at the upcoming summit for them to discuss, and with that to come up with some, what you just mentioned, real strategies, real coordination policies. Mr. Cui.
Yes, I think firstly, besides this state-to-state or government-to-government level, now China or some other partners want to have some deeper or some more local cooperation. For example, now between China and Europe countries, not only on the central government level, now we do have some local government level discussion and some cooperation.
Not just discussion anymore. We want to see the lower hanging fruit. So what are those projects you can help us to understand?
Yes. Also at the same time, we need to make clear that we should have some more, economic consideration or some more benefits model exchange. So that's the reason why I mentioned it before that how could we implement a kind of a PPP model.
It's all about we can, and we can. Yes, we can, but we are trying to look for lower hanging fruit. So I'm just trying to figure out what those could be. Well, is Pakistan example? You were in Pakistan, and will that be a good example for the rest of the world? Will that be the model?
Well, I think if you're looking for low hanging fruit, there's already been considerable investment in infrastructure. I think in the case of Pakistan, there's already a strong industrial base there, but they are very energy deficient. And I think in the case of Pakistan, to find ways to increase energy production there, both short and long term, would be what is needed.
I'm sure when you were talking to your colleagues in the Asia-Pacific region, Mr. Rosellini, they would ask you, so what has China got in mind? And I'm sure you have a better idea. What usually you would tell them?
I think what the world needs now are more global partnerships. I mean, globalization has achieved a lot in the last 20 years. It's not been all perfect. I mean, some people maybe have lost out because of globalization, but largely speaking, it's helped to dramatically reduce poverty. It's dramatically increased the size of economies. And we need more of these platforms that allow for global connections. And this is one of them, and it's very much something that we should be supporting.
We are sitting in this studio in Beijing with the backdrop of the ancient Silk Road. And our ancestors were smart enough to do trades by creating roads and routes on their own. And now we hope with more coordination and real policies, we can lead to a better road and better Belt and Road Initiative. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us. Nicholas Rosellini and Cui Hongjian. Really appreciate it.